It was just another quiet morning in a small Georgia town in the summer of 1987. Birds chirped, the heat clung to the air like a damp towel, and the streets buzzed gently with the hum of early commuters. But somewhere, far from the sleepy pace of daily life, an FBI agent named Thomas Kane was walking into the unknown, heading out on what was supposed to be a standard investigation. It was routine. It was boring. It was supposed to be safe. Until he vanished. No calls. No letters. No sightings. One minute he was filing reports at his office in Atlanta, and the next he was gone without a trace. His disappearance sparked a quiet ripple in federal circles, but without a lead, without a witness, without a body, his name just faded into cold case files, collecting dust. 4 years later, in a rundown storage facility just off the interstate in Birmingham, Alabama, a unit overdue on rent was opened for auction. The place smelled of mildew and cardboard. No one expected anything more than old furniture or forgotten clothes. But as workers pulled up the rusted roll-up door, a musty draft swept out, and behind stacks of water-damaged boxes, they found something that stopped everyone in their tracks. A single, locked metal trunk. No labels. No markings. But inside was something no one could have predicted. It didn't just revive a dead investigation. It opened a whole new chapter. Dark, confusing, and completely unexpected. Before we unravel what was found in that trunk and what it meant for the Thomas Kane mystery, there's another part of the story you need to hear first. A story that, at first glance, seems completely unrelated. Different time, different place. But trust me, it all connects. Fast forward to present-day New York City. The A train was packed, like it always is around 8 a.m. There's the usual chatter, the clicking of heels, the occasional screech of the rails. Among the sea of tired commuters, 17-year-old Jamal Rivers stood quietly, gripping a worn-out backpack and listening to music through one busted earbud. He was headed to a summer internship, nothing fancy, just helping out at a community center downtown. But he had plans. Big ones. College, a business degree, maybe even something in law. But that day, something happened that would change his path forever. As the train jerked forward, an older pregnant woman in a business suit stepped on, looking flushed and uncomfortable. No one moved. Everyone kept their eyes glued to their phones. But Jamal, without hesitation, stood up and offered her his seat. No big speech. No expectation. Just a kind gesture. She smiled, a little surprised, and thanked him before sitting down. As the train rolled on, she reached into her purse, scribbled something on a small piece of paper, and handed it to him before getting off at the next stop. Jamal almost didn't read it, just folded it into his pocket and went about his day. But later, when he opened it, his whole world shifted. The note was simple, just a few lines. But the name at the bottom, the one written in slightly rushed cursive, sent chills down his spine. Because it wasn't just any name. It was a name tied to one of the strangest FBI cases in U.S. history. And it was the key that would eventually lead investigators back to that rusted storage unit in Alabama and the secrets that had been buried inside it for decades. This is the story of a missing FBI agent. A random act of kindness. A mysterious note. And a trail of clues that spans generations and pulls together strangers from opposite ends of the country. And just when you think you know where it's going, just when you start to piece it all together, everything takes a turn. So, what exactly was in that storage unit? And how does a teen from New York end up holding the final clue? You'll have to keep watching to find out. Jamal stood at the corner of 125th Street that evening, staring down at the note again under the faded glow of a street lamp. The paper was small, no bigger than a receipt, and the handwriting was neat but rushed. It read, "Asterisk, thank you for your kindness. You remind me of someone I once knew. If you ever find yourself wondering about the truth, look up Agent Thomas Kane. Yell. Asterisk." He didn't know why it bothered him so much at first. Maybe it was the way the woman had looked at him. Like she'd seen a ghost, or like she knew something he didn't. Or maybe it was the name. Thomas Kane. It echoed in his mind like it was trying to tell him something important. He typed it into his phone out of curiosity. At first, Nothing came up that seemed unusual, just a few common links. But then, buried on the second page of a search, he found an old article from 1991. FBI agent still missing after 4 years. Investigation cold. It hit him harder than he expected. This wasn't just some note. This was a breadcrumb.
A trail.
But a trail to what? The article described Thomas Kane as a seasoned FBI agent who had been working on internal corruption investigations before he disappeared. Nothing about his work had ever gone public, and even the news reports seemed vague, like they were afraid to say too much. Kane had gone missing during a trip to Savannah, but none of the records confirmed what he was doing there or who he was meeting. Just that he never came back. His car was found abandoned 2 days later outside a closed-down train yard. No fingerprints. No signs of struggle. No phone records. Like he'd vanished into the air. Jamal sat there for hours reading every scrap he could find. There was something strange about the tone of everything. Like people wanted to forget Kane ever existed. His family hadn't spoken to the media in years. His name never came up in any of the FBI's official historical timelines. It was like he'd been erased.
But why?
Back in Alabama, 2 storage facility workers had been the first to open the locked metal trunk. Neither of them could explain why it hadn't been removed earlier. The unit was nearly 5 years past due. A mix-up in paperwork, someone said. But something about that too felt wrong. Inside the trunk, investigators would later find 3 strange items: a set of black leather-bound notebooks, a rusted handgun with no serial number, and a sealed envelope marked, "Do not trust anyone, TK." The notebooks contained pages and pages of coded notes, scribbles, maps, and odd references to something called Project Silent Hour. No one at the Bureau would comment on what that meant, and the files were classified so deeply they weren't even visible through regular channels. But someone else was paying attention. Someone who didn't want this story resurfacing. Back in New York, Jamal started to notice little things. The same car parked across the street more than once. A man in a gray coat who always seemed to be one step behind him on his commute. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe he was just imagining things. But deep down, something told him that the note wasn't just a thank you. It was a warning. Or a clue. And whoever wrote it, this yell, had trusted him with it. He tried to track her down. He checked the surveillance footage from the subway that day, but the MTA denied access. He asked around at the station, but no one remembered her. Pregnant woman, blonde hair, early 40s? Nobody had seen her. It was like she'd just disappeared too. The more he dug, the weirder it got. Thomas Kane's disappearance wasn't just some random case. There were whispers, threads on obscure forums, old blogs, even redacted documents that hinted at something bigger. Something involving rogue operations inside the government. An experiment that had gone too far. And names. There were other names, ones that had been listed in relation to Kane's last assignment. Some of those people were also missing. A few had turned up dead under mysterious circumstances. One was said to have driven off a bridge. Another was found in a motel room with no ID, no phone, and a handwritten note saying, "I knew too much." Jamal's gut told him this wasn't coincidence. He printed out everything he could find and started piecing things together on his bedroom wall like something out of a detective show. Red string, pushpins, names, dates. His mom thought he was just stressed from school, but he didn't want to drag her into it. Not yet. He couldn't explain it, but he felt like he was standing on the edge of something dangerous. And whatever it was, it started back in 1987. That name again, Project Silent Hour. It came up 3 times in the notebooks found in the storage unit. No explanation. Just references like Silent Hour starts now, and they're using the project again. Same playbook, different faces. The last entry was dated June 12, 1987, just 2 days before Kane vanished. And then there was the handwriting in the notebooks. It matched the note the woman on the train had given him. That sent a chill through Jamal's spine. Could it be the same person? Was this yell someone who had worked with Kane, or maybe someone who had been part of whatever Silent Hour was? And how did she find him? Why him? Out of all the people in New York, how did she choose him to give that message to? He wanted to talk to someone. A journalist maybe. But who would believe a teenager with a note and a handful of internet searches? He didn't have proof. Not yet. All he had was a strange story, a gut feeling, and a growing fear that something big was hiding in plain sight. Late one night, Jamal got a message through an encrypted forum where he'd posted a question about Silent Hour. The username was Just Observer, and the message read, *, you're not supposed to know. Stop looking, or you'll disappear like the rest. *. He stared at the screen, heart pounding. That was no random message. Somebody was watching him, and they were scared of what he might find. But instead of backing off, Jamal felt more determined. He printed a copy of the message and added it to the wall. He didn't know where this was going yet, but something told him it was only the beginning. And somewhere out there, someone knew the whole truth. Jamal just had to survive long enough to find it. The next morning, Jamal woke up to the sound of his phone buzzing nonstop. Unknown number. No voicemail. Just 5 missed calls, all back to back. He didn't answer. Something about it didn't feel right. He looked out his bedroom window, scanning the street below. The same dark sedan he'd seen last week was parked across from his building again. No one inside. Or, at least no one visible. He closed the curtain slowly, trying to stay calm. His pulse was racing. He didn't know who Observer was or how they'd found him so fast, but now it was obvious. This wasn't just an internet rabbit hole. Someone was watching him, and they didn't want him getting closer to whatever Thomas Kane had discovered all those years ago. At school, Jamal tried to act normal, but his mind was elsewhere. He kept thinking about the woman on the train, the name in the note, the eerie tone of those old files. He started wondering if Kane had even disappeared by accident. What if someone had wanted him gone? What if he had uncovered something that could still ruin people, powerful people? Jamal's instincts told him this had gone far beyond a cold case. This was a cover-up, one that was still active. That night, he took a chance and messaged Observer back. He didn't write much, just asked one question. *, who are you? * 4 hours. There was no reply. But just before 2 a.m., another message came through. *, you're walking into something that never ended. Silent Hour wasn't shut down. It was renamed. And you're not the only one they're watching. *, the message ended with a file attachment. Jamal didn't open it at first. He was scared, unsure if it was a trap. But eventually curiosity took over. Inside the file were scanned documents, old memos, redacted letters, and a list of names.
Kane's was on it.
So was someone named Evelyn Langford. At the bottom of the list, a handwritten note. *, eyes only. Do not trust Langford. *, Jamal's breath caught in his throat. Yell Evelyn Langford. Could it be the same woman? But why would someone warn him not to trust her? She hadn't seemed dangerous. If anything, she seemed like she was helping him. But that's how secrets worked. No one showed you everything at once. Now there was another angle to the mystery. Who was Evelyn Langford really? A whistleblower? An insider? Or someone manipulating him? Across the country, in a small town just outside Phoenix, Arizona, a retired field analyst named Douglas Moran was watching the same story unfold from his own distance. Douglas had worked alongside Kane in the mid-'80s, back when they were investigating illegal surveillance programs tied to private defense contractors. He'd left the bureau 2 years after Kane disappeared, officially due to medical burnout, but everyone knew it had more to do with the case going cold and strange pressure from above. Douglas had buried the Kane files in a locked cabinet in his garage for decades. But when Silent Hour started popping up again in encrypted chat rooms, his alarms went off. And now, some teenager in New York was suddenly on the trail? It wasn't coincidence. Someone had restarted the machine, and Jamal had walked right into it. Or been led into it. Douglas made a call to an old contact, someone still buried deep inside the agency. "It's happening again," he said. "They've opened the file." Back in New York, Jamal's subplots were starting to weave together. His best friend Amir, a tech-savvy senior with a side hustle in digital forensics, had noticed something weird in the metadata of the documents Jamal had been sent. One file had GPS coordinates embedded in it, an old trick used to trace back the location where a photo or scan was made. The coordinates pointed to a small property outside Nashville, Tennessee. A private research facility registered under a shell company with no website, no phone number, and no visible staff. Just a name, Morningside Analytics. It didn't appear in any public databases connected to law enforcement or science. But one reference in a hidden part of a forum connected Morningside to something else, an experiment called Stage Zero, which had been flagged in an internal Department of Defense memo for ethical and legal violations involving human behavioral testing. The documents weren't clear about what kind of testing, but if Silent Hour had evolved into something else, Stage Zero might have been the next phase. Jamal's questions were no longer just about a missing agent. They were about an operation that had crossed lines, lines that the public never even knew existed. And then a new twist. Jamal came home one afternoon to find a yellow envelope slid under his front door. No return address. Inside was a Polaroid photo, grainy and slightly faded. A man standing in front of what looked like a motel in the desert. It was Thomas Kane. Jamal had seen his face in old newspaper scans. But this wasn't from the 80s. It looked recent, maybe even from the last year. And scribbled on the back in thick blue ink. Asterisk, he's not dead. Not yet. Asterisk. Jamal didn't know who had sent it, or why, but someone wanted him to keep digging. Or maybe they were warning him to stop. He called Amir right away, and they both agreed. It was time to go deeper. If Kane was alive, or if someone was pretending he was, the answers wouldn't come from New York. They'd have to follow the trail west. But they couldn't just jump on a plane. They needed a plan. They needed help. Meanwhile, Evelyn Langford, if that was her real name, was already on the move. Somewhere in Virginia, inside a dim apartment with drawn blinds, she stared at a wall filled with photographs and maps. At the center of everything was a pinned photo of Jamal. She whispered to herself, almost like a prayer, "He's the last one who can put it together." But they're watching him. And the watchers, whoever they were, weren't far behind. By the end of the week, Jamal could barely sleep. Every night felt heavier, like something was closing in. He kept the photo of Thomas Kane tucked in the back of his journal, checking it over and over, like the image might change or reveal something new. The man in the photo didn't look scared. He looked tired, like someone who had been running for too long. Jamal couldn't shake the feeling that Kane was still trying to reach out, still trying to finish whatever he had started back in 1987. The decision to go to Tennessee didn't come easy. Jamal wasn't the type to sneak out or lie to his mom, but he knew if he told her the truth, she'd never let him go. So he said he was going on a weekend leadership retreat through school and that Amir's dad would be chaperoning. The lie hurt more than he expected, but this wasn't just about curiosity anymore. It was about doing something that no one else had dared to do for nearly 40 years, find out what really happened to Agent Thomas Kane. They packed light and left on a Friday night Greyhound bus, blending in with a crowd of college students heading south. Amir brought backup drives, encrypted tools, and a portable hotspot. Jamal carried only a backpack, the Kane files, the note from Evelyn Langford, and the Polaroid. As the miles rolled past in silence, Jamal stared out the window, the roads getting darker, the trees thicker, and the questions louder in his head. By Sunday afternoon, they arrived just outside Nashville and used a rideshare app to get dropped off near the coordinates Amir had pulled from the document file. The driver looked uneasy when they mentioned the road name. "Ain't nothing down there but trees and old fences," he said. "You sure this is the place?" Jamal nodded. The driver didn't ask again. The road to the facility was unpaved and nearly swallowed by weeds. A faded, rusting sign read, "Private property, no trespassing." Beyond it, thick woods and silence. No sounds of birds. No distant cars. Just the faint hum of wind cutting through trees. They followed the path on foot, stepping carefully, watching for cameras, tripwires, anything. After about 20 minutes of walking, they spotted it through the trees. A single building, long and windowless, surrounded by a chain-link fence with a padlocked gate. It didn't look like a research facility. No logos. No people. No parked cars. Just silence and concrete. They waited until dark. Amir worked fast, slicing through the gate lock using a hidden wire cutter he'd smuggled in his sock. Once inside, they moved in shadows, staying low. There were cameras, at least 4 on each side of the building, but Amir had found a way to jam the signal for a few minutes, just enough time to slip in. Inside, the building smelled like old paper and static electricity. Fluorescent lights flickered above, but only a few worked. The halls were quiet. Long dust coated the tile. Doors were labeled with number codes instead of names. It didn't feel like a lab. It felt like something else. A place that had been shut down in a hurry, or maybe hidden on purpose. They found the first room unlocked. Inside, rows of filing cabinets lined the walls. Some were empty, but others held folders with names that sent a chill down Jamal's spine. Subject K, 34. Stage 0, Behavior Cycle Reports. Langford, E. Access Level Red. Most of the files were heavily redacted, whole pages blacked out, but the fragments they could read were disturbing. Mentions of sensory control, psychological conditioning, memory erasure. One document had the phrase "Silent Hour Protocol Activation" circled in red ink, with Kane's name scribbled in the margins. And then they heard it, footsteps echoing from the far end of the hallway. They froze.
Someone was inside.
Amir killed the flashlight. Jamal reached for the folder instinctively, stuffing it into his bag. The steps were slow but steady, not rushed. Whoever it was knew the building. Jamal motioned toward the back exit they had passed earlier, and they started to move. Quietly, breath held. But before they could slip out, a voice stopped them. "You don't know what you're doing," the voice said calmly from the shadows. He tried this once. It nearly broke everything. It was a woman's voice.
Soft.
Measured. And familiar. Jamal turned slowly. Evelyn Langford stood there, older now, her blonde hair tied back, her face pale under the weak hallway light. She didn't look surprised to see him. If anything, she looked sad. "You shouldn't have come," she said. Jamal took a step forward, heart pounding. "You gave me the note. On the train. You wanted me to find this." Evelyn looked away.
"No.
"I wanted you to understand why it had to be hidden." "Where's Kane?" Jamal asked, louder than he meant to. "Is he alive?" Evelyn didn't answer right away. Instead, she stepped toward a side door, swiped an old ID badge against a reader, and opened it. Inside, the room glowed dim blue from wall monitors. Dozens of screens, some playing loops of surveillance footage, others frozen on files with names Jamal didn't recognize. "He didn't vanish," she finally said. "He ran. And they let him. Because the alternative would have been worse." Amir stepped closer to the screens. "What is all this?" Evelyn hesitated, then pressed a button on the desk. One of the monitors switched to an old video recording. Grainy, time-stamped 1987. Thomas Kane stood in the center of a dim room, looking straight at the camera. His voice crackled through the speakers. "If you're seeing this," Kane said, "it means someone found what I couldn't finish. Silent Hour isn't just a program. It's a reset switch. They've used it before. And if they're using it again, it means the system failed." The video cut out. Jamal stared at the blank screen, stunned. His heart thudded louder than the silence. Evelyn slowly turned to him. "You think you're chasing a mystery, but what you're really holding is a trigger." Before Jamal could ask what she meant, the sound of tires crunching gravel outside made them all freeze. Headlights swept across the windows. More than one vehicle. Armed figures stepped out, dressed in black, moving fast and coordinated. "They found you," Evelyn said quietly. "And now it's too late to walk away." Pick up from the previous section and write revealing the story's climax. Resolve the main conflicts, but include a final unexpected twist to surprise the audience. The climax should be intense and satisfying, providing a resolution to the key plot points while maintaining suspense until the very
end.
Keep the narrative engaging with relevant keywords. Also, do not make any headings. Only write story in paragraphs. Also, keep the wording simple and natural tone. Also, make the script human-centric and don't give feel of AI generated. Also, don't create violated content which can affect YouTube policy. Jamal's stomach dropped as he heard the metallic clack of car doors shutting and the low, static voices of men speaking into radios. Whoever they weren't here by accident, and they definitely weren't lost hikers. Evelyn's eyes darted to the security monitors, and for the first time, her calm cracked just slightly. She backed away from the window and reached under the desk, flipping a small switch hidden beneath a panel. The hallway lights dimmed even more, and a faint hum of electricity pulsed through the walls. "They've locked onto your digital footprint," she whispered. "They wouldn't have found this place otherwise. You were followed." Jamal turned to Amir, but Amir just shook his head. "No way. I encrypted everything. They couldn't have." "You pinged a private channel," Evelyn interrupted sharply. Silent Hour's infrastructure still exists, buried inside government networks, funded through ghost accounts. They've been listening, waiting for someone to trip the line. Outside, boot steps crunched across gravel and glass. They were getting closer. Jamal reached into his bag and grabbed the folder he'd taken earlier, trying to decide if it was worth holding onto it or if it would get him killed. Then Evelyn said something that made both him and Amir freeze in place. "You're not the first one to come looking for Kane." Jamal blinked. "What?" "There was another kid," she continued, backing toward a side corridor. 3 years ago. Same train. Same note. I gave him a choice. He ignored it." "What happened to him?" Amir asked, barely above a whisper. Evelyn didn't answer. She simply stared at them for a long second, then said, "Follow me. Now." She led them down a narrow corridor lined with pipes and dust-coated machinery. Behind them, a loud crash echoed from the main entrance. Someone had breached the door. Evelyn punched in a code on a wall panel, and a concealed metal hatch groaned open, revealing a steep stairwell leading underground. They hurried down just as shouting filled the hallway above. Once they reached the bottom, the air turned colder, and the walls narrowed into a tunnel, dimly lit by flickering overhead lights. At the far end was a steel door with a heavy latch. Evelyn pushed it open, and they stepped into a space that felt untouched by time. The room was lined with outdated computers and analog equipment, tape machines, film reels, a wall of blinking red lights. In the center sat a table with a metal briefcase, sealed with a biometric lock. Evelyn turned to Jamal. "This is what Kane was protecting. Not files. Not reports. Evidence. Hard proof that Silent Hour was more than just surveillance. It was manipulation, memory control, entire psychological rewrites. They didn't just monitor people, they erased and rebuilt them." Jamal's voice shook. "Why him? Why Kane?" "Because he found the original test subjects," she said. "He was one of them." Jamal stepped back. "What?"
He volunteered, she said.
"In 1983. Before he was ever assigned to the Bureau, he entered a study he thought was for behavioral research. But it was a front. They took pieces of his identity, rewrote his memories, and then embedded him back into the system, as a test case to see how deep they could go." "But he remembered," Amir whispered. "Eventually, he figured it out." Evelyn nodded. "And once he remembered, he ran. But not before copying this." She placed her hand on the briefcase. "What's inside proves everything. Names. Blueprints. Before and after case studies. Some of them are still active." Jamal stared at the case, heart pounding. "Then why are we down here? Why not release it?" "Because if we do," Evelyn said, eyes locking with his, "we collapse something far bigger than just Silent Hour." These methods weren't just tested, they were deployed. In schools. In military training. In political campaigns. If we open this case, we expose the framework of how decisions have been shaped for decades. Outside, another explosion rocked the ground, and the building trembled above them. Dust fell from the ceiling. Someone was using breaching charges. Jamal didn't know what to say. He could feel the world around him shifting. His chest was tight, his thoughts racing. Everything he thought he knew about Thomas Kane, about Evelyn, about that moment on the train, was unraveling fast. And then Amir, who had been staring at the blinking red console on the far wall, stepped forward. This system, he said, pointing at the ancient server rack. It's still online. There's a live uplink to a relay. This room is connected to something. Evelyn turned sharply. That's not possible. That uplink was shut down in 2002. Amir shook his head. It's active. And sending. They all stared at each other for a moment. Then Evelyn walked over and yanked the lid off the server panel. Inside was a blinking module she clearly didn't recognize. New tech, not part of the original hardware. Someone's already accessed this, Amir said. They've been using this facility without your knowledge. Evelyn looked stunned. That means... Jamal finished her sentence. They're not here for us. They're here to cover their tracks. Suddenly, a different alarm blared, sharper, louder. Not from the breach above, but from within the room itself. Amir looked back at the terminal. His voice dropped. They just triggered a purge protocol. What does that mean? Jamal asked. It means this place is going to wipe itself. Fire, data burn, maybe even collapse. They're not just coming to silence us. They're destroying everything. Evelyn turned to Jamal. You need to decide. If we take this case, we can run. Go public. Risk everything. Or we leave it, and maybe survive long enough to try another way. But Jamal couldn't move. Behind all of this, every step, every file, every message, was still one question that haunted him. If Kane's still alive, he said slowly, why hasn't he come forward? Evelyn looked at him with something close to sorrow in her eyes. Because he doesn't know who he is anymore. And in that moment, the floor beneath them groaned as a secondary alarm triggered, countdown initiated. They had less than 5 minutes to choose. And above them, the sound of footsteps was getting closer. Jamal's pulse pounded in his ears as the countdown blared through the underground chamber, its harsh tones bouncing off the walls like an alarm clock in a nightmare. The case sat in front of him, cold, heavy, humming softly, as if it knew what it carried. Amir's eyes locked with his, the same unspoken thought flashing between them. This was it. No more time. No more digging. No more wondering if they were right. They were here. And it was all real. I'll get us out, Amir said, already typing into the server console, fingers moving fast. I can override the lock and upload everything in the case to an external cloud. But once I do, we can't turn back. Evelyn grabbed his wrist. They'll trace the signal immediately. I don't care, Amir shot back. This doesn't get buried again.
Jamal didn't speak.
He reached for the biometric lock on the briefcase. Evelyn's eyes widened as he pressed his thumb to the scanner. For a second, nothing happened. Then it beeped green. The case clicked open. Inside were 3 hard drives, wrapped in silver shielding. One was labeled MK Black, another Patient Set C Reentry, and the third simply said Kane. Jamal picked up the third one, staring at the name. He barely heard Amir mutter that the upload had started. Evelyn stood frozen, her face pale as a ghost, her breath shallow. Why does this drive have Kane's name? Jamal asked quietly. Evelyn didn't answer right away. She looked at the drive like it was something cursed. Then, finally, she whispered, because it's not just information. It's him. Amir turned from the console. What? She took a shaky breath. After the initial memory erasure tests, Kane's mind started fracturing. They didn't want to lose the data, so they extracted portions of his memory, mapped them, stored them digitally. That drive, it contains a neural imprint. His identity. His fears. Everything they took from him. He doesn't remember who he is because who he was is sitting in your hand. Before Jamal could process that, the monitors around them began to short out. Sparks flew. The system was crashing. Above them, the building shuddered again, and a hot rush of air came through the stairwell. A fire had been lit upstairs. The purge had begun. Amir pulled the drives from the system. Uploads complete. We have it all. Evelyn turned to Jamal. You have one chance to run. Take the side tunnel through the generator room. It leads to the forest. Once you're clear, disappear. You understand? Never use your real names again. Never contact me. Jamal nodded, clutching the drive. Come with us. I can't, she said. They'll be expecting too. If I stay, maybe I can slow them down. Amir hesitated. Are you sure? She gave a sad smile. I made my decision a long time ago. Smoke curled down through the stairwell. The walls hissed with heat. They ran. Through the tunnel, over broken wires and rusted grates, every step rattling in Jamal's bones. He could feel the weight of the drive in his pocket like it was alive, like Kane himself was still with him somehow. By the time they burst out into the forest, gasping, coughing, the building behind them was belching smoke like a dying machine. Sirens echoed faintly in the distance. Either help or something worse. They didn't wait to find out. For the next 6 hours, they ran, hitched rides, stayed off-grid, phones powered down, no signals. Eventually, they reached a motel off a forgotten stretch of highway. They paid in cash, collapsed on the beds, and said nothing for a long time. The sun was rising when Jamal finally plugged the Kane drive into Amir's laptop. It didn't ask for a password. Just opened, folders filled with video logs, memory simulations, voice clips. The screen flickered, then loaded the first file. Thomas Kane appeared, younger than he looked in that Polaroid, sitting alone in a bare room, eyes glassy. I don't know who I am, he said quietly. But if someone finds this, maybe you can help me remember. Jamal's throat tightened. Amir leaned in closer. But just as they clicked to open the next file, the screen glitched. Not a random error, but something inserted, deliberate. A new file appeared at the bottom of the screen, one that hadn't been part of the original drive. Its name was just a single word. Watcher. What the hell is that? Amir muttered. Before they could open it, the screen froze. The laptop shut itself off. Jamal stared in stunned silence. Then the motel room phone rang. They hadn't given anyone the number. Amir looked at him. Jamal picked it up slowly, heart pounding. The voice on the line was calm.
Male.
And chillingly familiar. Good work, the voice said. You passed phase 2. The line clicked.
Dead.
Jamal lowered the phone. His hand was shaking. Amir looked at him, eyes wide. What did he say? Jamal didn't answer. Because the voice on the phone? It was Thomas Kane.